Namaskar friends. Today we will be understanding the six primary rasas or tastes according to Ayurveda and how we can use this simple knowledge to treat the various disorders and how to self-diagnose the chronic conditions that we might be suffering, waxing and waning day in and day out. So we will try to understand the six rasas, their relationships with the Gurvadi gunas, and then how to associate it with the primary doshas that we are having to treat them. So let me first start in a very categorical fashion to list the six kinds of rasas. So the six kinds of rasas or cardinal tastes are Madhur, followed by Amla, followed by Lavana, followed by Kattu, followed by Tikta, and lastly Castia. Now these of course have some English translations. Madhur implying sweet. I'm not going to use that space, but you should remember Madhur is sweet, Amla is sour, Lavana is salty, Kattu is pungent, Tikta is bitter, and Castia is astringent, secondary to tannins. So these are the six kinds of foods. Now also try to understand what things are involved in formation of these rasas, and then we'll closely relate it with the gunas, or I should say doshas. Madhur is a combination of two different mahabhuts. One is earth or prithvi, and the second is water or api. The qualities of Madhur will be secondary to the qualities of earth and water. So, the qualities of Madhur we have to understand in terms of, this is of course the mahabhuts, and here we will call them the qualities as gunas. The gunas that we are going for are the Gurvadi gunas, the cardinal 10 different gunas, but we are mostly concerned about temperature, texture, digestibility. So Madhur in sequence of importance is going to be Snigdh. Snigdh is the quality that gives unctuousness or sticky, slimy tendencies. Also, it is going to be Guru and Sheath. Sheath followed by Guru. Those three qualities define Madhur. Compare Madhur, which is composed of earth and water, which are the heaviest, most Guru gunas. Compare it with Castia, which is a combination of earth with air. Earth is heavy, air is light. So here, because it is a combination of the extreme opposites or almost extreme opposites, if you ignore obviously ether, the tendency for Castia is to be very opposite of that of Madhur. So Castia is going to be, instead of sticky, mucousy like Snigdha, the opposite character will be Ruksha, dry. But since it is air, it is again going to be Sthira. I should say Shita. And also Because of the effect of the earth, it is going to be Guru. Okay, now let's come to Amla and Kattu. They have some similarities and differences within. But you see how the only difference in Madhur and Kasaya is in the texture. The Sheet and Guru part, they are going to be similar. So the Amla and Kattu, which is sour and pungent, of course you can bifurcate it. It is combination of water and fire, whereas the pungent Kattu is a combination of fire with air. So you see the difference. Water is more snigdh, air is more ruksh. But both of them have ushna. So the primary property of both the Kattu and Amla gets on to become ushna. So ushna predominates. Ushna predominates. Think about it again. In terms of Kasaya and Madhur, what was the binding element? The binding element was earth. Earth happens to be sheath. That's why the sheath was retained in both. Earth happens to be Guru. That is why Guru has been retained here. Okay, similarly, fire happens to be Ushna. So Ushna was retained here. Now, if you look at water, it is also moist, or what we call Snigdha. And because of the fire-water combination, this one happens to be Laghu. Similarly, Kattu is going to be Ushna thanks to fire, but instead of Snigdha, it becomes Ruksha or dry. And because of the fire and air combination, again, this one is going to be Laghu. Okay, now let's look at something which is the property of elimination in Tikta or bitter. It is composed of the most subtle Mahabhuts. The Mahabhut of air combined with ether. So this is one strange taste, bitter taste, which is going to do good when you have excess of anything. Vata, Pitta or Kapha, doesn't matter. All three it will work, but more so in Pitta, because Pitta determines excess. So looking at Tikta or bitter, the tendency is to combine the elements of air and ether. So air and ether both happen to be sheath. So Shita becomes the primary guna of Tikta. Also, air and ether happen to be Ruksh, and air and ether happen to be Laghu. So air and ether combination is Ruksh or dry, and Laghu, easy movement, light, early digestibility. Last one is of course Lavan. Lavan is a combination of earth with transformation of fire. Hence, Lavan happens to be Ushna as the primary property. But not only Ushna, it is, I should say, the primary property is Guru actually. That is what distinguishes it from everything. None of them have the digestibility as the primary property. Lavana is strange because it has Guru as the primary property. But of course, as I said, Lavana is a combination of two heavy things, earth more so than fire. But because of the fire and earth, Lavana also happens to be Ushna. Hence it creates the heat. Now whether Lavana is going to be Snigdh or Ruksh, you can tell because fire itself is kind of a dravya, it's a unctuous property, so it will be Snigdh. So this is the primary understanding. The thing that is at the top is the most important characteristic in terms of temperature, texture, digestibility in the Guruvadi Guna. And then the second one is second important, third one is third important. So knowing this, now you can understand any category of food, what is the primary property. So let's do this with the understanding, starting from above to below, the six tastes, understanding the doshas. So thinking of Madhur. Madhur is a combination of Bhumi with Jal. Hence, there is the tendencies of Snigdha, Sheet and Guru. But Madhur happens to create a sweet taste. It's a taste of repletion, deposition, starting to give things. Rasya Snigdha Sthira Hridaya. That is the best explanation of sattvic food that comes with Madhur. It has ras, hence it's snigd. It has water, gives the ras to it. Water implies ras. Whenever you think of water, think of ras. So there are strong tastes, sweet. So rasya snigdha sthira hridaya. That's why whenever water is absent, especially in astringent and bitter, there is not much ras or taste in there. The madhur foods will be good for people with levity, lightedness. So if you think of Vata Pitta and Kapha, who is going to benefit the most from Madhur? Vat. Let's think about Vat. Vat is about cold, dry combination of Vayu and Akash. So bitter technically will be a bad taste for Vat if you were to think just by theoretically. The best thing for Vat will be Madhur. Also in terms of Pitta, because Pitta is a combination of Ushna. There is fire, Ushna, as well as a little Laghu quality because of fire. Hence, the Guru and Shita of Madhur is going to help the Pittika. So if you have Pitta condition, you don't want to create more Snigdha. So try to have the Madhur foods which are a little dry for the Pitta people. Whereas in case of, and less processed, that's why Mishri is a good alternative to white sugar, because Pitta, pro-inflammatory, processed foods, it cannot handle. Whereas the Vat people, because they have more problem of degeneration, anything you do, it has less probability of inciting an inflammation. They are too weak to mount an inflammatory response. Hence, Vata can deal with any kind of Madhur foods, whereas Pitta will only like certain foods which are not processed, chemically altered, manipulated. Hence, sugarcane juice, watermelon juice, those things are fine. But again, because they are juice, there's too much of dravya or snigdha quality, they have to be becoming more dry. Then they will be doing better, especially to counteract the snigdha portion of pit. But in general, Vat and Pit people can have Madhur foods. Kapha people is a relative contraindication. Reason being, Kapha itself is composed of water and Prithvi. So these are the elements that are forming Kapha, if you think about. So if it is forming this, you should avoid this because it's a dosha. Similarly, water and fire, think about. Water and fire are forming Pitta. So if it is forming Pitta, you should avoid the Amla. What are Amla? Amla are the foods that are acidic. Amla itself means acid. The acid foods can be citrus fruits, ascorbic acid, as well as fermented foods. Anything like kimchi, kombucha, sauerkraut, anything that has been fermented. Even urad dal that is fermented to form idli. It is little khata or sour. So that sour taste is good. Again, it is good because it is having a lot of fire to transform things. So it is good for kapha and is good for vat. Vat and kapha, it is good for. It is a total no-no for pitta, because pitta already has a very strong fire of digestibility. It has a lot of heat. Hence it creates formation of heat. Heat in Ayurveda relates to pro-inflammation or attacking your own inflammatory system when it is autoimmune, or attacking other immune systems which are allergies. So allergies and autoimmunity are both manifestation of Ushna in Ayurveda. Hence you don't want these people, pitta, red face, blanching, itching, always having some heat, anger, lust, anger, greed is high. All these things of excesses are denoting pitta. The fire is out of control. Hence you want to control the Agni in these guys. Hence the water plus fire, pitta, has to be avoiding amla or sour foods. Now, the most common foods I told you are the fermented foods, but also amla in general. Although amla helps to reduce tridosh because it has an aftertaste. If you eat amla, you'll feel there's a sweetness and then there's an aftertaste. So the sweetness itself is good for the people with pitta. So I should say that amla or the acidic foods, citrus fruits, those should be avoided by the people of pitta. They're okay for the vat because they're going to create ushna for the vat, and they're okay for kapha because the increased metabolism, mandagni, that is going to be strengthened by people who eat the sour foods. So come to the third one. Third one is lavana. Lavana is a combination of namak. Lavan means namak actually, salt. So lavan is a combination of the prithvi with the fire. So there is an element of guru from the prithvi and there's an element of ushna from the fire. Hence, it is good to liquefy the mucus. If you think about kapha people, they have a lot of accumulation, impaction, obstruction. Those things can be broken down by a pinch of salt, a pinch of lavana. Now, in case of the Vat people again, they will benefit because there is these elements of Guru, Ushna and Snigdh. All these things are required by the Vat people. So, absolutely welcome in case of Vata and also welcome in case of liquefying the problems of Kapha. The only problem is that too much of lavana is going to create its own problem because it's guru nature, difficult to digest. Hence, the vat person will start having accumulation. It cannot move the thing that was supposed to be helping. More than the fire, they are getting damaged by the earth. So, too much of salt should not be eaten by anybody. Pitta, definitely everything is ati sarvata varjet for pitta, but even the vata people, they should eat limited amount of salt. Too much of salt will cause accumulation suddenly, a paradoxical reaction where in place it was liquefying and breaking the mucus, moving things, conduction, electrolyte property of lavana. There, instead of that, it is creating accumulation. So the accumulation happens in form of water because what is lavana? Lavana is the electrolyte, sodium chloride. Sodium chloride is conducting electricity. So similarly, you're conducting the neuronal electricity through the mind. You're conducting the flow of blood through the veins. If that gets blocked, you can have problems of kapha, which is of course things like polycythemia or thickened blood, or even in case of brain, your thinking is slowed down, your memory slows down. So you don't want those things. In case of lavana, eat small quantities of salt, and if you eat too much, then the paradoxical reaction is accumulation of fluid. So edema, swelling of the feet, swelling of the hands. You can have conditions of worsening of the congestive heart failure, which is collection of water in the body, or nephrosis, glomerulonephritis, collection of the water by the kidneys, or liver, which is collection of water around the belly, what we call ascites, or even the legs, edema, peripheral edema. So what I am saying is excess of salt will lead to accumulation of water, ascites, peritoneal fluid, or you can have pericardial fluid or pericardial effusion. Around the lungs, there's pleural effusion. Anytime you hear effusion, collection of fluid, there's too much of lavana. Lavana has to be decreased, and especially for pitta people, there's only one kind of lavana that they can have. Of course, I told you anything that is white and processed, white sugar, white salt is extremely harmful to the pitta people. But the one thing that lavana that they can use is the rock salt, Himalayan pink salt, because it is the native, natural way of eating. And that is why it is even having a sheath lavan, as they call it. The shwet lavan, rak lavan, sheath lavan, which is referring to the rock salt, pink salt. Those salts are okay for the people of pitta. But in general, again, because the fire, it is not going to be agreeing with pitta. And of course, if you eat too much of lavan, the kapha people, they will start having more accumulation of fluid or effusion, as I was saying. So this is the quality of guru lavana. Fourth one, come to Kattu or pungent. Okay, this is very similar to amla. You will see Kattu and amla have some properties which are similar, secondary to the composition of fire. The only difference is Kattu is not only hot like amla, it is also dry. Ruksha. This quality is distinguished. Ruksha or dryness is the quality that distinguishes the amla from the Kattu. I should say Kattu from the amla. Okay, so Kattu is hot because of fire. Amla is hot because of fire. Kattu is also going to be dry because of air, ruksha. Whereas amla, because of water, it continues to be snigdha. That is the only difference. Both of them, because of fire, they are ushna and lagu, which is heating it up and easily breaking things down. So when I think of Kattu, I want you to think of things that are spicy, Tikha, as they call it. But Kattu in general is good for Vata because it is increasing Ushna. And again, Kattu is good for Kapha because it is increasing the metabolism from Mandagni. The Agni is going to be brightening up again in case of people with Mandagni, slow metabolism, slow digestion, Kapha people. Okay, so that is why again Pitta, it is bad because fire is already there, you don't want fire. And in certain cases it's bad for Vata people. If they are Ruksha, it will aggravate the Ruksha. The foods that are Kattu, I would say are chili, cayenne pepper, even things like ginger. Those are Kattu. Come to Tikt. Tikt is composed of the two most subtle, unmanifest as it can be, Mahabhuts, which are Vayu and Akash, ether. So the tendency of Vayu and Akash, both of them, are to create Sheet and Ruksh. And Laghu, of course, because they are so light. So Sheet, Ruksh and Laghu, but the most important is Sheet. So whenever you think of Vata people, you don't want to give them too much of bitter things because of the Sheet tendency. Also Ruksh and Laghu are bad for them. So one condition, if you were to think that it's bad, will be Vat. But again, it is a property of detoxification. The idea is when the Tikt hits the gustatory or the tongue receptors, it creates emesis or a nauseating feeling. Hence, you will see a lot of people will vomit when they eat neem or karela, because the idea is to eliminate the excess amla that is deposited in your stomach, so it comes out. So hence, it think of shatkarm. If you think, one of the ways is emesis. So it helps to get rid of excess of the toxicity. Hence, neem, karela, giloy, cucumber, zucchini, anything that has alkaloid. Most of the green vegetables have an alkaloid tendency. Hence, they are tikta. Tikta is going to be helping the most for people with pitta. Pitta is excess. Excess को reduce करना है, तो you have to get out, detoxify. Detoxification is the main element of pitta, bitter foods. So you can detoxify the excess, degeneration of vata, pro-inflammation of pitta, or accumulation of kapha. All three can be done by tikt. So I would say tikt is good for all three, but more so with pitta, followed by kapha, and be careful with vata. Because there is Sheet, Ruksh and Laghu, all three are damaging. The good thing about Vata is though, you don't have very strong digestion, and in case of Tikta, your tendency is to help with the digestion as well by elimination or detoxifying. So again, that's a good idea. Now last is Castia. Castia is astringent. Astringent referring to the combination of Vayu with Prithvi. So there is a thing that is very heavy and a thing that is very light. Together, they will create one thing that is most profound is ruksha or dryness. The dryness, concretion, aggregation by flowing cold dry air over it. So see what it's doing. It's trying to make things compact. So if you have too much of ascites, fluid collection because of lavana, that is going to be counteracted by the astringent tannins of kasaya. So one of the treatments of fluid collection in the body, legs, ascites is to reduce the salt, but the second thing is to increase the tannins, the astringents, which are helping to remove excess of the water by cold dry air. If you keep blowing cold dry air over a lake, the water evaporates. Over the ocean, it becomes clouds. So that is why condensation is happening by using concentration is happening by using the element of kasaya. So again, kasaya is cold and dry, probably not good for vata, but it is good for kapha because they have too much of snigdha, and pitta because it is cold. So you have to avoid in case of vata. So that is in general the categories of foods. So let me assign an idea in your mind whenever you think of a food so that you can relate well as to what qualities that food has. When I see madhur, I think about rasya, snigdha, sthira, hridaya, ahara, satvik, priya, what Krishna says. So these things are going to be life prolonging. So these things are deposition. Deposition, replenishing. Okay. The second is amla. Amla is sour, metabolism. So this is all about digestion and fermentation. Digestion by the enzymes in your belly, fermentation by the microbes in your gut. That is the power. Lavana is all about salt, it is all about conduction. Conduction of impulses through the brain to have better memory, conduction of blood flow through the veins and arteries so as to have nutrition to the various organs. So it is more about distribution. You can think about it as distribution. This is more about digestion. This is more about distribution. Then Kattu, pungent. Now this is helping to start slowly coming in the range of detoxifying. So Kattu, because hot, it is causing heat generation. The calorie heat generation, that property, intrinsic core body temperature, that is coming from Kattu. Whereas Tikta is about elimination or detoxification, too much of heat generation, too much of calorie deposition. Well, we need to get rid of it because too much of anything is not good. Ati sarvatra varje. That is the power of Tikta. And last is Kasaya, astringent. It is more about desiccation. Desiccation or dehydration and toughening in the process. It is not only desiccating, dehydrating your excess fluid, it is causing tightening or toughening. So that is why it will help to remove the excess fluids of the Lavana. Too much of heat generation is needed. So you see, it is kind of a way the body works. You need something which is calorie rich, protein rich, anabolic, which is Madhur. You need to break that thing so that it becomes in a roop where you can digest it. That is the power of Amla. Whatever you have been digested, you have to move it to the target tissues, assimilation, so that they can use it. That is conduction distribution of Lavana. Whatever you have conducted and distributed, there has to be chemical processes in the cells, what we call the catabolism inside the cellular level to create heat in the mitochondria, the powerhouses of the cells. That is heat generation of Kattu. And the last, whatever the wastes are created from the process of digestion, assimilation is going to be eliminated and detoxified because the undigested, unwanted wastes remaining in the cells can damage the cells, degenerate the cells. So you eliminate or detoxify. That is the power of Tikta. And in last, whatever you cannot detoxify and eliminate, we will hopefully get rid of it by degenerating, desiccating, so that slowly and slowly we have recovery from whatever could not be eliminated. These are the 6 processes in the form of 6 tastes that we can use on a daily basis to understand our body, and from the problems that you are having based on the doshas, you can find out the treatment. Because Vata is degeneration. Anytime you have breakdown of the cells, you want to give rasya snigdha sthira hridaya. If there's too much of that, then you need rajasic foods that need to transform it. What he calls Kattu, Amla, Lavanya, Ati, Ushna, Tikshna, Ruksha, Vidahina. So that Kattu, Amla, Lavanya, all 3, Kattu, Amla, Lavanya are together. These 3 are going to create changes, transformation in the body, challenge the status quo and break it. And of course, what is left over, Puryatam, what he says, leftover foods, stale foods, those foods are contributing as tamas, and that can sometimes refer to the qualities of astringent. So, in short, my friends, know your body, know your symptoms, know your doshas, and accordingly use these foods to treat yourself. Once you know that fruits, grains are rich in madhur, your acidic fruits as well as fermented foods are rich in amla, your salts are lavana, your kattu pungent are the chilies, cayenne pepper, pipali, the tikta are the green vegetables that are alkaloid or bitter in taste, and the castia are the astringent tannins in strawberries, blueberries, in your also in cucumber, in cabbage and cauliflower. You kind of know what kind of foods to eat and what kind of foods to avoid. If you have too much of kapha building up, you cannot eat madhur. If you have too much of acidity, reflux going on, you cannot eat pitta provoking foods that are amla. That kind of differentiation will help you understand what foods to eat and what foods to avoid. Hope you like this video. Please feel free to leave your comments before. Jai Shri Ram.